Top 10 time, ladies and gentlemen, number 10 to number 1, our best movies of 2019 in the eyes of Justin, which is this guy, and Tyler, which is this guy. And hey, this is our movie awards in case you hadn't known. So we are into the last part of our best movies of 2019, number 10 through number 1. I get to kick things off this time, and it's fun because I'm having an argument with myself over what my selection is for my number 10 movie. Let's talk about it. So my number 10 best movie of 2019 is Captain Marvel. But in reading my own review for it, I was on something. I was on some crusade. I was on the anti Brie Larson campaign at that point, apparently. Yeah. So I was very much along the lines of like, hey, you're entitled to not like this movie if you don't like the movie. But I think a lot of the reason why people don't like this movie is preconceptions either about the actress or the character. And I think there's some degree, because I mean, you even sort of talked about some people have some feelings about Brie Larson.
It's fine because, to be honest, I disagreed wholeheartedly with some of the stuff she said.
Right.
But as an actress, she's not that bad. In fact, she can be great.
Yeah. And I did feel like the movie kind of got hamstrung a little bit, both by the fact that it is a tee-up origin story. So there's going to be some stuff in there where the movie kind of drags a little bit because they got to get the origin story stuff in there. And by the fact that Jude Law plus artificial intelligence doesn't exactly make for a great villain. And I do remember feeling that when I came out of the movie. I think this is one of my less justifiable picks, and I kind of wish I would have looked ahead in my list because I probably would have called an audible. But you know what? We're in here now. It's fine. I'll defend it until the day I go to my grave. Captain Marvel, my number 10 best movie of 2019.
Yeah, I can't get behind the number 10 on that one,
nope.
but a good movie. I put it on.
Part of Justin can't even get behind the number 10.
So my number 10 is Spider-Man Far From Home.
Okay.
2 Marvel movies to start off.
Back to back.
So Justin teed me up a little bit with his position that you just can't defend. So I'm a make things worse.
Okay.
So maybe it makes things better for you. Far From Home is the best cinematic Spider-Man movie.
Period.
I was a little redundant. Best cinematic Spider-Man movie. Anyway, it's the best Spider-Man movie. Better than Spider-Verse, which I liked. And It was in my list last year, but it was not I don't even think it was top 15. But I have no hate towards Spider-Verse. But people love Spider-Verse, including you. I think might have given it movie of the year.
No, it was up there.
Yeah,
for sure.
So
I think it might have been third.
So allow me to say something less offensive there. So that's what I was trying to help you out. Aside from that,
I was on the hook, and now I'm not on it.
Aside from that, Mysterio is a really great villain.
Mm-hmm.
And you've said a bunch of stuff. I can't remember exactly what you said. I might have disagreed. I might have agreed, but I really like this. These Spider-Man MCU movies brought me back to Spider-Man. I liked him as a kid. Mm-hmm. I liked the 90s cartoon, especially. And then he lost me. And now I'm back on because I think Tom Holland is still a great Spider-Man, and they've been writing him really well. And I think it's actually better than the first one.
Okay.
Maybe less funny as a whole, but makes up for it with a little more emotion. And that seems to be the trade-off that a lot of movies, sequels especially, they kind of just they trade one for, I don't know. It's just something I noticed.
Deadpool to Deadpool 2. My number 9 best movie of 2019 is Rian Johnson's Knives Out. So obviously I really dug this significantly more because I think it was only on an honorable mention. Was it even on your honorable mention? No, it wasn't.
I don't think so.
So obviously Rian Johnson. A lot of people have a complicated relationship with Rian Johnson, although they shouldn't, based on his non-Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
If you want to have a complicated relationship with Last Jedi, that's fine. I understand.
Yeah.
But his non-Star Wars stuff should be pretty straightforward that he's doing some pretty damn good stuff. And again, this was a relatively unconventional way to tell a whodunit, which is to reveal whodunit less than halfway through the movie. We talked about the great performances and just a strong ensemble type of cast. I mean, this could have been legitimately higher on this list, like could have been in the top 5 conversation if you would have if you had eliminated maybe 2 characters in order to give more breathing room to the other ones, to the other really interesting ones. I legitimately think this movie could have been like an 85 for me, an 85 plus home run in the top 5 conversation. But that's just how much I gave myself over to the sheer magnetism of this cast and of the story and the movie as a whole. And I love me some Christopher Plummer whenever I get to see him, even if he dies. So, at a rating of 80 out of 100, Knives Out, my number 9 best movie of 2019.
Yeah, I expected so much from this. I'm like you. I thought this was going to be really high up on my list. I mean, it was high up in your list, but not on mine.
Right.
So it's kind of upsetting to be. Because I said in a previous video, like, I've been singing the praises of Johnson since Brick.
Yeah.
Which I still am. Go watch Brick. Brick is awesome. And Looper's awesome. But I just, not as into this one. Still good. Still
Absolutely.
Good.
Oh, for sure.
My number 9 is The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Oh, that's very high
now,
for that.
I'm going to acknowledge race here because people will be like, you're racist because you acknowledge race. I don't think this is controversial. You know, you see, there's a lot of black movies that deal with black issues and slavery and more contemporary stuff in like fairly gritty ways, and that is like in politicized ways. And that's great. I didn't know anything about this movie besides the name, and it starred a black guy, and the name was The Last Black Man in San Francisco, so I kind of thought it would be more of that.
Right.
And admittedly, I'm not as in love with like slavery movies and that as I could be. I mean, there's certainly some that I really, really like. Like, I remember Fruitvale Station dealt with, you know, the killing of a black man and stuff, and I thought that movie was fantastic, and here I am justifying that I like black movies for some stupid reason. I like good movies.
Right.
But I thought it was going to be that, so I was a little less excited, because, like, we see quite a few of those now. Like,
yes.
Literally, I've watched a bunch, like Queen and Slim kind of dealt with that in a different way, and that didn't make my list, but I enjoyed that. This was not what I expected at all. Like, going in knowing absolutely nothing, just having expectations of what it is going to be. Right. It's more visually and tonally interesting than I thought, like, funnier. Just very and personal and just very interesting and kind of a little more unique. Not like off the wall crazy, but the way that it's shot, like the director had a clear vision and stuck to it. And the only weak link itself is the main guy who plays the main character, but I can't remember his name. His acting, he couldn't always handle the heavy lifting, so he's the weakest link in the movie, but he's not that weak. Right. You know, like, it didn't take me out. It wasn't that bad performance. It just, there was moments where he stumbled a bit. But yeah, I was very pleased with how original this movie was, and it was not at all what I was ignorant going into it because I had never even seen the trailer. Just it got a lot of good reception, so I was like, all right, well, here we go. This is probably gonna make me feel bad as a white person,
right?
Right, and it really wasn't that. It was nice. It was a nice change of pace. It was very well done, and I really love this movie. And it's the first 9 out of 10 on my list.
Very nice.
And this could have easily have placed higher. That's the problem now, where I'm getting to the point where a lot of these movies, I could shuffle them and they could end up in different places. I'd be completely okay with it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
My number 8 best movie of 2019 is Alita: Battle Angel.
Yes.
Where What?
It's not on mine.
No.
But fuck it, yes.
Yes. So again, I talked about it. Obviously, I gave Robert Rodriguez my best director of 2019, and just what he and James Cameron were able to combine, because as they were basically the two main co-writers, what they were able to combine to do to bring this world that I'd never seen before, because I haven't read the Battle Angel Alita manga. But to bring this world to life and to do it in such a visually stunning way where I felt the CGI held itself together at the very least, and there was no real obvious, like, gross shortcomings. And in a movie like this, a gross CGI shortcoming could be the difference between loving it and being like, oh, that's a huge disappointment,
Yes.
right? So it didn't really have that, and it was able to overcome the shortcomings of relatively simplistic storytelling just with the sheer lovability of this main character. Like, I love Alita. I love that character. She is fantastic. They told such an engrossing story. And the more distance that I got between when I first saw the movie and, like, just the movie only improved in my mind. Like, I only came to enjoy it more and utterly fall in love with the movie the longer the time went that kind of passed through it. But in all other ways and all other levels, it was a movie that I absolutely adored. At a rating of 80 out of 100, Alita Battle Angel, my number 8 best movie of 2019.
I liked it. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I didn't realize you loved it as much as you did. I felt that, for the most part, it was a case of, like, the characters are good enough to be interesting but not noteworthy. The world building is interesting but not exactly, like, you know, noteworthy. Like, I'm not like, oh, but the world building and the characters and all this. Like, it's good. It's all good. And she's a badass and stuff like that. My main issue was that I found way too much of the dialogue to be incredibly hokey. That appears to be my biggest concern about it. But I would like to see a sequel. I would go see the sequel. And I don't think we're going to get the sequel. But we might. So my number 8 is Marriage Story. I gave Adam Driver and ScarJo, but especially Adam Driver, a lot of credit for their performances, and that's really the noteworthy part. I mean, the script is really good. It's nuanced. It's not melodramatic. It plays with its subject really well, and you know, it's actually a little funnier than I expected it to be, but it doesn't sacrifice the emotional oomph. And the ending really, really got to me. But yeah, but ultimately it comes down to the performances, and the performances of the leads are two of the best performances. In one case, the best performance of the year in Adam Driver's case, and then ScarJo, one of the best performances of the year. And it's very rare you get that in a movie where, like, there's two people that you could legitimately say are the best in their gender for, like, performance of the year. I didn't give ScarJo number 1, but I wouldn't also not hate someone if they're like, she gave the best performance. Yeah, all right. I can get behind that.
Nice.
So, yeah. Number 8 is Marriage Story.
My lucky number 7 best movie of 2019 is one of the first movies I saw in 2019, which is Glass. And Glass almost broke when he dropped that pen. Exactly. Like, look, I loved Split, obviously, and I was like, I can't wait to see them cap the end of this trilogy. And as soon as Glass was announced, I'm like, great, excellent, I'm down for it. Forever the butt of commentary and criticism of M. Night movies are the twists, and that was a couple of things. There were a couple of instances in this movie where people were like, that twist was terrible. Like the twist towards the end about what stuff is or what they say stuff is. And I really don't want to spoil it because it was a movie I really liked, so obviously I want you to go see it, or I want you to see it. So that was a main point of criticism towards the movie. It's like, to me, in universe, all of the twists made sense. Like, in universe, I had absolutely no problem with it at all. So I didn't really see what people were seeing there. And one of the lines is one of my favorite lines I put in any review this year about this movie, and I guess you could say this about M. Night Shyamalan as a whole. If you resist the urge to perform open heart surgery on this movie looking for things not to like, you might just love it. And that's really just where I ultimately wound up falling with this. I was predisposed to loving this from the get-go, and I wound up loving it. It is my final movie to be rated 80 out of 100. Glass is my number 7.
So my number 7 is an absolute darling this year. So
Okay.
it's Parasite. This was in every list that I saw.
Yeah.
Like every single list. In number 1 in quite a few, and honestly deserving of it. It's another. Well, this one's actually an amazing movie. The best that Joon-ho Bong, I think his name is, the best that he's done. Mind you, I haven't seen everything, but he did The Host, which I thought was good, not great. He did Okja, which I thought was great. He did Snowpiercer, which I think we agree is great. But this is his best. This was superbly shot. It builds a tension all the way through. Like it's always bubbling, and then it just erupts. It's unpredictable. The performances are great. Music is great. It's so deserving of its praise. Like, it's not my favorite movie of the year, but you could put this down to 5 or maybe even 4. I'd have to look, and I would be okay with it. Because like I said, I think I said this on camera, pretty much any movie from, 9 or so, or 8 on, you could probably put down, and I would be okay, closer to number 1. I'd be okay with it. Parasite is an amazing movie, so, yeah.
My number 6 best movie of 2019 is where we enter my 85 out of 100 territory. The Peanut Butter Falcon. And The Peanut Butter Falcon, to me, was such an intoxicating combination of entertainment, warmth, and poignancy in its story. And again, we talked about the great performances, Zach Gottsagen, Shia LaBeouf. You had excellent secondary characters in Dakota Johnson and Bruce Dern to play off of in that movie. And I think one of the things that I loved about it so much is how there's a convenience in the storytelling that really mirrors Zach and his perspective on the world, and I guess to a larger degree, the assumed perspective of someone with Down syndrome. Like at one point, it's the scene where they have to cross the river, and Zach just looks at Shia LaBeouf and says, "We should get a plane." He just says it, right? Because it's just like that's his idea. It's like, okay, there's my obstacle. How do I get it? Oh, we can fly over it if we had a plane. So he just said, well, we should get a plane. And and when I talk about the convenience in the storytelling, it's that there are moments of there's an antagonist to what they're trying to do, but there's never really any moments of dread. No. I would say in the movie.
No, it's breezy, like I think I said.
Breezy. Breezy's a good way to. So it's the way they tell the story and the conventions of the story kind of mirror Zach's worldview in that way, and that was one of those poignant. When it kind of dawned on me, I was like, oh, there's a little more of the poignancy of the story, and there's a little more of, I think, what they're really trying to get across, and I unabashedly really, really loved this movie right from the get-go. So at a rating of 85 out of 100, The Peanut Butter Falcon, which is not a bad wrestling name, actually. The Peanut Butter Falcon, my number 6 best movie of 2019.
I think warmth was a good way to put it. You did a good job there. You used the words good.
I used
warmth
the word
is a good
good
word to describe that movie. Mm-hmm. Good choice. I'm glad you really liked that.
Yeah.
I figured you'd like it. I wasn't sure that you'd pretty much love it, but you did, and that's good.
Yeah, I was quite pleased that it met what I hoped it would really meet.
Yeah.
And exceeded it in a lot of ways. I was very. Part of me was just like, at the very least, I'll get a really good Shia LaBeouf performance out of this because there's already people talking about it. But then I was like, oh my god, this guy. This Zach guy.
If we would have been able to see Shia's other movie this year, then we probably could have had a Shia LaBeouf Best Actor thing going on, right? On body of work. My number 6 is Glass.
Ooh, yes.
I love Glass. I've been such a champion for Unbreakable since I watched it way back when. And then when Split, at the end, when the plot twist happened, it revealed that it tied into Unbreakable. I was literally... No, that's a poor use of literally. I was losing my shit. And it went from an 80 to a 90 out of 100 for me just because of the plot twist. I was so psyched. I talked about it the entire time home to my brother because I was so pumped. So Glass, not well received by a lot of people, which was upsetting. But then I saw it and I realized it doesn't matter. It's awesome. It's so different than every other superhero movie. It's a decidedly slow burn, but it's also a nice psychological breakdown of these characters. I like that it spends so much time in the ward. It made me wonder sometimes if maybe they are crazy. And that's such a feat because I've seen 2 other movies with these people and I know they aren't.
Right.
And yet there were times where I was like, maybe they are crazy. He was smart enough to let McAvoy do all the heavy lifting. But then at the same time, Bruce Willis awoke from his slumber and actually put in like a decent performance.
Yeah, it's true.
But I think I might knew his limitations in both like the fighting style, which they fought like you would think they would. Like a guy with super strength isn't going to do martial arts. He's going to be like an old guy with, he's just going to go and like. So I actually liked the grittiness of the fights. Just really great. The plot twist worked for me. Everything worked. Like, I love that it was such a psychological movie, too. Like, I love that aspect of it.
Definitely.
And it's unfortunate that so many people didn't seem to like Glass. I mean, I don't know if the audience was against it as much. I don't know. I know critically it was not well received, but maybe the audience, maybe they liked it. I don't know.
It'd be an interesting thing to check on, like, Rotten Tomatoes or something.
But I really loved Glass. And I didn't know where to place it because part of me wants to put it higher. Because I have such an attachment to specifically Unbreakable.
We now enter top 5 territory. My number 5 best movie of 2019, and this was one of the surprises that I kind of thought I might have had up your alley. Number 5 best movie of the year, Little Women.
Little Women.
Little Women. And it might not be a shock when you go back and be like, well, of course. You gave Saoirse Ronan Best Actress. You gave Greta Gerwig an honorable mention nod in Best Director, so of course. But, I mean, you could not have convinced me at the beginning of the year that Little Women would be in my top 5. You couldn't have. You would not. Especially where I don't have the background. Like, Greta Gerwig doesn't have, like, that Denis Villeneuve track record with me of great movies. Like, she did Lady Bird. I thought Lady Bird was uneven, but decent. Like, I enjoyed it. Yeah. And I really enjoyed Saoirse Ronan in it. But Greta Gerwig, like, again, I keep going back to it. Denis Villeneuve, she is not. But she crafted such an impeccable portrayal of this novel and of post-Civil War USA. Incredible performances, like I said. The best Chris Cooper, arguably, that I've seen in years. Although we have another Chris Cooper movie that might be coming up a little bit later. Maybe, just maybe. Timothy Chalamet, who is always fantastic. Saoirse Ronan, like I mentioned. Emma Watson is very good in this movie. Just so many excellent performances, and it just crafted such an impeccable world to kind of just wade through. And it will lose a few members of the audience, and I believe it actually did based on reviews. It will lose a few because the way it tells its story, it time hops so much. And sometimes it can be a little difficult if you're not paying immaculate attention. It can be a little difficult to tell what is actually happening versus what's happening in Joe Marsh's novel. But other than that, it's just a tremendous, tremendous film, and it's my number 5 best movie of the year.
I didn't see it. I might have really liked it, but nothing in that movie really seems like something that I'd be excited to see.
Right.
I don't know if I said this on camera or not, but I wanted to watch it because I figured there'd be a good female performance in there somewhere, which apparently there was.
Yep.
And that was the only reason I was going to watch, because the subject matter, whatever, and all that, I'm just like, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really into I'm not really you're a history guy, so like period pieces and stuff appeal to you more than they do me.
For sure.
So, but I might have been right with you had I seen it. Who
Possibly.
knows? Because I actually liked Lady Bird. I think probably a little more than you.
I think
Not
so.
that I loved it, but I think I might have given it like an 80. I don't know. I can't remember. My number 5 is Monos. I gave the Alejandro Landez director nod. I won't go on about that too much, but just shot wonderfully. The movie feels otherworldly. From the opening wide shot, I was just in. Even though a good portion of it takes place in one spot, I think he moves around a little. The director managed to make it feel huge while not losing the inner conflict aspect of it. Good performances. It's one of those movies where it's not always pleasant to watch because the subject matter and the music is actually really unnerving, which I'm stealing that from a Critica review because somebody said unnerving. I thought that's the perfect way to describe that. It's not always a pleasant watch, but it's always an intriguing one. And, you know, when I say it's not pleasant, I don't mean I didn't have a good time. There's just some movies that are just either brutal or just uncomfortable, and Monos can be that sometimes. And I would certainly not want to watch like movies of this kind all the time. And I'm not saying it's the most brutal movie I've ever seen by any means. It's a little unpleasant sometimes, but in a good way, in an endearing way. Because it's like sometimes you want those challenging movies. So my number 5 is Monos.
Okay. 2 vastly different choices for number 5.
Yes.
My number 4, best movie of 2019. Nobody's gonna like it.
Good.
And I don't care.
Good.
And my only justification for it is, I just like Star Wars. I just like Star Wars. I'm sorry.
Just like Star Wars.
I just like Star Wars. And I just really like these movies. I don't like Last Jedi as much as this one. I don't like this one as much as I liked Force Awakens. But Rise of Skywalker, to me, was a really darn good movie. And I just like Star Wars. I hear the criticisms. I do. I even agree with some of them. And I don't care. Because I just like Star Wars. And that's my only justification. Rise of Skywalker, my number 4 best movie of 2019.
I find these movies to all be good, but not great. And that's where I land on that. However, I will say this. Rise of Skywalker, not even the best Star Wars thing this year. The Mandalorian shits all over it because The Mandalorian is awesome.
It's
legitimately awesome. But yeah, Rise of Skywalker is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, I like it. I don't dislike any of these movies.
No.
But I'm also gonna say something else. I like Rogue One a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
That's less inflammatory. I like Solo more than Rise of the Skywalker.
Ooh, okay.
I didn't think I'd like Solo that much.
Right.
But it was funny because I pretty much rate them all the same except for Rogue One. It's like 70 or 75. It's like all the movies except
Right.
Rogue One, which I gave an 85 because I actually really like Rogue One.
Yeah. Oh, Rogue One is tremendous.
Yeah, so my number 4 is going to be a quick one because there's not a whole lot to say really. Is John Wick 3. This is a very consistent series.
Mm-hmm.
Very inventive action, great
Definitely.
choreography. Keanu Reeves is awesome in the role.
Mhm.
I don't know which of the John Wicks are necessarily better than the others. I just kind of group them together. I can't tell the difference.
Right.
Gotta be honest. But that's not a criticism, because it was really good. And yeah, John Wick 3.
Beautiful set pieces. Gorgeous. Number 3. How the movie awards are almost over.
Wah.
I know, it sucks. Top 3 time, getting down to the nitty gritty. My number 3 best movie of 2019. It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. The second surprise of the year that I didn't think would be anywhere near this part of the list. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood Tom Hanks, yet again, playing a real person, and just absolutely, what a home run. Like, just the absolute perfect casting. And just grabbed me on this emotional level right from the first 5 minutes of the movie. And I was like, okay, unless this thing decides it wants to let me go, it has me.
Yes.
It has me for the entirety. And like I mentioned, Chris Cooper, I said, hey, Little Women, best Chris Cooper I've seen in a long time. I can actually make the argument, I possibly should have given Chris Cooper a Best Actor nod, because Chris Cooper was in this as well and was so damn good. And I'm like, where has Chris Cooper been for the last decade? Like, man, if you're capable of these performances, you need to be in stuff that I'm going to see every year, because wow, what a great job. And Marielle Heller, who directed this, I thought did a tremendous job. And again, I didn't really tell me anything new necessarily, but it didn't have to. It just had to tell me that, yes, a little highly dramatized, but just tell me this story again, and I'm more than happy to just, sit by the fire and listen to this story again. And that was what this movie was to me. At a rating of 85 out of 100, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, my number 3 best movie of 2019.
I didn't see it. So I got no.
But again, you made a very competent argument before where it's like, I already saw Won't You Be My Neighbor. I really loved Won't You Be My Neighbor. So it just I don't think this is going to tell me anything new. And in all fairness, it probably didn't.
Yeah, if there maybe had been greater wait for this, not like a year.
A year
then
afterwards.
I might have actually went to see this.
Right.
But I just saw Won't You Be My Neighbor. Like, I can't remember when, but I saw it. So for the next 3, it was very difficult to order these. But, for the integrity of a list, you have to order it. I couldn't just be like, well, they're tied for 3. I may regret all of this once it's said. However,
Absolutely.
number 3, with love, is The Beach Bum. Number 3. My boy, Harmony Korine, is not number 1. He predicted off camera that The Beach Bum, and I swear I did not change this after you predicted it. I did not.
Wow, no, I believe you. Because I know
To
you have
your
integrity.
credit, it could be number 1.
Of course.
But when I made the list, earlier this week, I just couldn't do it.
I don't think, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but I gotta say this. You don't know they're behind the YouTube video. You don't know the pain that this man is currently going through.
I know, it's sad.
Right down in his plums.
I wanted so bad to give Korine number 1. And I could, but
Right.
I feel like I might not be being completely honest with myself. It's like my issue with it was that when I first watched it, and I still feel this way. It's a great stoner comedy. Korine nailed the vision. He stuck with the tone. I love. I've said it, but I love the breezy, no consequence thing because it's so different than every other movie. I know you're not such a fan of the no consequence. I remember you saying and I get that, but I liked it because I thought it stayed. It made sense. Thematically, the was just like, yeah, who cares if a shark attacked him? It's like, we're having a good time. And it's so different than every other movie in that sense. He nails it. I still believe wholeheartedly that he just nails all that. And I still think Matthew McConaughey's a great performance. And Snoop Dogg was fun. And everybody was fun. However, I rewatched the movie like a few months after. And it hurt the movie a little bit for me. This probably would have been number 1 had I not rewatched it. Because I used to think that it was up there with Korine's best. So, which would mean Gummo, Spring Breakers are like the 2. However, I would also put Mr. Lonely in that conversation because I do adore that movie. And I've rewatched that actually recently, and it still held up. I didn't feel any lesser about it. I still love it. I still appreciate it. And Gummo and Spring Breakers I've seen probably 5 times. Gummo maybe more. This, I rewatched it, and I noticed it was a little more tedious than my first watch. It was not tedious as a whole, I was not bored per se. Just there was times where I was like, yeah, it's not quite as compelling as like my first watch when I was just invested in seeing a Korean movie. So that's kind of what hurt it a little bit for me. If I hadn't rewatched it, I think it would have been number one. Because I still think Kareem's like best director. McConaughey, I know I didn't give him number one, but at a point he was number one, and he's still top three. And I love it. I love the music. The music is amazing in it, and everything works for me. Just for some reason, I no longer feel, well, not for some reason, I know the reasons, but it's not first tier Korean, it's probably second tier with like Julian Donkey Boy and Trash Humpers and stuff like that. So, which is not a bad place to be because I'm a big Korean nut hugger. He's one of two, I guess, artists that I would actually consider an idol. The other, Kurt Vonnegut or Vonnegut, I guess his name is, but there's only two that I'm like, there's a lot of guys and girl creators I love, artists and stuff I love, but there's only two that I would consider like idols, and he's one of them, and it hurts a little bit, but I gotta be honest with myself because there's been times through the years for movies and video game lists where I just haven't been honest with myself because I was letting my fanboys, like I didn't want to be like, I didn't want to give something else number one, like because the Thing in my favorite series was released, so I gotta give this number one, and I had to be honest. Beach Bum is the third best movie of the year.
Wow.
So there you go.
That took a lot of courage. It did. Honestly, it's just like it took, maybe courage is the wrong word, but like that took integrity. My number two best movie of 2019, and I could be a jerk to make him wrong in what he predicted for my number one, but with the integrity that this man just showed on camera, I could never do that to him. My number two is Avengers Endgame.
My number two is Avengers Endgame.
I kind of figured that was where we were going with this.
However, I feel like I should have probably switched Beach Bum and Endgame. Oh well.
Oh well.
Oh well.
Hashtag oh well. So, look, I am rather conflicted, or I was at the time anyway, when I left Endgame, because on a visceral emotional level, no MCU film has gotten to me more than Endgame.
Agreed.
Which is obvious. I mean, it's God. You're capping a 10-year arc. So I mean, and you're losing. You basically know, but especially when it happens, you know you're losing like a significant part or significant parts of what you've watched for the last 10 years. So on a visceral level, none of the MCU movies have come close. Even the snap in Infinity War didn't really, like, it hit.
No, it didn't hit me on an emotional, like, wanting to cry level, but it hit me on a Brock Lesnar beating Undertaker at WrestleMania.
Yes. Oh my God, what a beautiful way to put that.
And I'll say that I actually liked, in a sense, him beating Undertaker. So I don't mean this in like it was a shitty twist.
No.
I mean I understand.
But it was like, oh my God.
Yeah, because like I sat there when that happened. I was like,
they did it.
Oh, and then with Infinity War, it was like the same thing where I sat there. I'm like, and I watched the credits, and then like Avengers faded away in the credits, and I was like, fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
But I wasn't like Iron Man. You know what I mean?
Now, in saying that, I feel like now I can't really pick them out specifically now anymore, but certainly at the time when I did the review, I kind of felt like there were some plot points in Endgame that didn't quite get resolution and didn't quite get completed in a satisfactory way. And I remember leaving the movie, certainly the first time I saw it, feeling like, I think from a narrative perspective, this is actually one of the sloppier entries in the MCU. On most other levels, Endgame fulfilled what it had to fulfill, which was capping off, again, this thing that's been part of my life since Iron Man. And so, I mean, on that level, it couldn't be anything less than one of the best 2 or 3 movies of the year for me, and it winds up on my list at number 2.
Yeah, this is the thing. I enjoy Infinity War more than Endgame, and I think Infinity War is one of the best superhero movies ever made. Because I liked how different it was, because focus on the villain, it solved a bunch of problems. But this one was more emotional, and on first watch, I kind of agree that some of the plot was a little sloppy. I love how different Infinity War was, but I also understood that Endgame needed to have that heroic, good ending because people wouldn't be happy if they were like, oh yeah, by the way, we're continuing this plot. Maybe Thanos isn't there, but the devastation continues. I don't think a lot of people would have been real happy with that because they wanted it to be capped off. Although I think it would be interesting if maybe Thanos still loses in a sense and is dead or whatever, but maybe there's some real devastation. And I know that the snap thing is still, they're dealing with the fallout of that, but I was kind of wondering, what if he still kind of won and we continued that on? I thought that would be interesting.
Yeah.
I watched it a second time, and I think maybe this is why I ended up giving this the spot over the Beach Bum, is because on my second watch of Endgame, I still cried at all the same spots. I might have felt more emotional. I was still as invested in it as I was when I watched it, and I was willing to forgive plot holes and stuff like that. So maybe that's why I ended up giving it number 2, because while I think it's lesser than Infinity War, I do think Endgame is a really, really, really awesome, special movie.
Yeah.
So, there you are.
There you go. We had a consensus number, what was it? Consensus number 20 and a consensus number 2. We got two of our top 30. And because we were consensus number 2, here we are. My number 1 best movie of 2019. And again, I could have fudged my rankings if I wanted to in order to make this guy wrong.
So
But
I predicted Joker would be his number 1.
he predicted it, and I guess I'm relatively easy to read in that way, especially with the way that I rank movies. The fact that Joker, which is my number 1 movie of the year, got a 90 out of 100 from me, he knows what that means. And there was just nothing else that came along this past year that I actually got the chance to see that wound up challenging it. And it is Joaquin's performance, which I think he's spellbindingly good in this role, but it was more than that. The movie as a whole did whatever it wanted with me, especially the first time watching. Because the first time watching, I think I mentioned it, it was a very intimate showing. There was only about 8 people in the theater because it was the middle of the afternoon. But it's in this theater that's below ground, so there's very just sort of, it feels much more intimate than it actually is. But this movie ramped up my tension anywhere it wanted to. It made me laugh in places where I felt bad for laughing.
Yeah.
I would laugh at things and I'm like, nobody else is laughing at this. So I feel bad for laughing at this, but that was funny as hell. This movie did anything with me that it wanted. And I don't mind spoiling this because the movie's been out for long enough that you should have seen it by now. The gunshot. The gunshot got me to such a degree that I thought it happened in the theater. And it wasn't just the news articles that it's incel boys are using this as a reason to shoot up movie theaters. It's no. The gunshot in the movie made me feel like it happened in the theater I was sitting watching the movie. And that's how much I was into it. That's how much I was like, you have me, and there's no letting me go until this movie's over. It's done. I have submitted to this. The only thing I thought the movie didn't do, and I've mentioned this before, even though this does kind of harken back to the TV series, it doesn't reconcile the age gap between Joker and Batman.
Yeah, no. I don't like that.
I don't like it, and maybe it shouldn't dig at me like it does, but it does. So the only thing that I can think of is, okay, so Arthur Fleck might be the Joker, but he might not be the Joker that the Batman faces. Yeah. That he passes the mantle of Joker to someone else. Maybe. Yeah. And maybe that's the way they wind up going with it ultimately. But that is the only thing that was even remotely unsatisfactory to me about this movie. So at a rating of 90 out of 100, thank you, Joaquin. Joker is my number one best movie of 2019.
Yeah, it was a good movie.
It was a good movie.
I liked it, not as much as you did.
True enough.
But I'm bothered by the Bruce Wayne thing too. Because now it's like talk of sequels and stuff. It's like,
yeah.
now what are you gonna do? At some point, Batman has to come in to beat you up.
Yep.
Like, sorry, like it's just not that. Like as a one-off Joker movie, that is great.
Yep.
And I didn't even mind that, like, you know, Bruce was really small. But then I was under the assumption they wouldn't make sequels, which is probably stupid. And that would work. But if you're gonna make a sequel, I don't know. I mean, maybe it'll be a really good movie. You never know, right? But at some point,
the way that I would see them doing the sequel, and this might be an interesting little conversation to keep. The only way I could see them do it is they wait 5 years.
yes.
They argue that Arthur Fleck has aged 10. So in the movie universe, it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
And you can do that because Joaquin looks older than what his age is, so that's fine. And then at that point, you have Bruce Wayne at between 18 to 20 years old.
Yeah.
So you can make the argument
Yeah.
that he's become Batman. And then you have super young teenage hormone Batman versus geriatric Joker. But the only way that I think it makes sense is if Arthur Fleck dies and hands over the reins of Joker to someone else, whoever that would happen to be. It's the only way it makes sense to me. Maybe that's not the way they ultimately do it, but that would be the only way it would make sense to me. And I know you may have noticed I shifted my papers because there's no sense in keeping anything secret anymore because now you know everything. But I still don't know this guy's number one. And to be perfectly honest, it's not jumping off the page at me.
No, because it wasn't fair for me to get you to predict my number one. I mean, I didn't have this as my number one when I said this to you. Because I don't think there's any way you would possibly get this, because I think I might have mentioned this movie once.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was after I watched it or not. If it was after I watched it, then you had a bit of a hint, but you never would have remembered that I talked about it. If it was before I watched it, then there would be no way of you knowing. So my number one is a big cheater. I mentioned it before. It's actually it got Rotten Tomatoes says it's 2019, even though it was technically released in 2017. Tigers Are Not Afraid is my favorite movie of the year.
Wow.
So I got a bunch to say. One, I was drawn to this because there was comparisons to Pan's Labyrinth and The Devil's Backbone, but Pan's Labyrinth was the Del Toro movie that's truly special of the two. It checks all the boxes for me. Apparently, I really like stories with like kid street criminals, you know, kids without homes, like orphans and whatnot, living on the streets, having to do some pretty shady things for children. And then it's a horror movie, but I wouldn't say that it's super scary, but I've also noticed that I've said this off camera, that I tend to like horror imagery more than I like jump scares. Like if there's a dark, ominous atmosphere with some cool imagery, kind of like the first It, like it wasn't even that scary, but it looked so entertaining, so good to me, and it was kind of like this. Like there was some jump scares and stuff like that, but it was more about atmosphere. So it took that box. It was an interesting idea because it takes place during like a Mexican drug war, and it deals with the victims of said drug war, like with orphans and stuff, and like the main character's mom gets killed, and they're dealing with the horrors of living down there and having to deal with that being an everyday reality, and it's like a ghost story on top of that. Like it's not as fantastical as Pan's Labyrinth, where she like goes to different spots and sees like the Pale Man or whatever, and like sees these big frogs and stuff. Like she's only a ghost story, but you do see a little bit of Del Toro DNA in it. Great directing. The ending is beautiful and crushing, but happy in a sense. And this movie is special. And what's kind of interesting, to me anyway, is that last year, Infinity War was beaten by A Quiet Place.
2 years ago.
Well, it was well, it's 2020 now, but
2018.
This is 2019 awards.
Right.
So 2018 was A Quiet Place, a horror movie of all things, and like I said, I think earlier in one of these videos, like I'm not a horror fan per se, or I didn't consider myself one until like a year or two ago. But a horror movie beats Infinity War, and I'm more of a comic book superhero fan than I am a horror fan. So Quiet Place beats that, and then this year, Endgame and The Beach Bum is beaten by another horror movie. Wow. So it's 2 years in a row that a horror movie took the top spot.
Wow.
And this one was a foreign one. Yeah, just interesting premise, well shot, good acting by the children, and it's not afraid to show the harsh realities of the fact that kids die. It does not shy away from that. It's not like Hollywood, right? Like you think they're gonna they might show a kid dead, but you know, America's not gonna be like, you know what I mean? Like they shy away from that stuff a little bit. Not other countries.
There's no way.
Yeah, there's no way you would have.
I mean, I remember you mentioning this movie a couple of times to me, I think. And but yeah, no way would I have taken that over The Beach Bum.
No, you went with the smart guess. Either The Beach Bum or like Endgame were the smart guesses.
Right.
And The Beach Bum, you know, like I said, could have been number one. But
totally.
Yeah, Tigers Are Not Afraid is my number one. And it's not even a long movie. It's only an hour and 20 minutes, so it doesn't overstay its welcome.
Very
you know
nice.
what I mean? It's just, some of the CGI is, you can tell that it's a little more low budget because it stretched it a little thin. But I said earlier, I don't care. Like, and for the most part, it does really interesting things with its budget, but occasionally there are times where, like, well, that looks a little fake. But I don't really care too much with that.
We've reached the end. Here, on the shores of the ocean, come the end of our Fellowship Movie Award things. That's it. Our number one movies of 2019 have now been shared with you. Tigers Are Not Afraid and Joker, our number one best movies of 2019. Folks, we've been through ups, we've been through other ups. We've talked about actors, actresses, directors, the worst movies of the year, the best movies of the year, our fun miscellaneous awards that no one else in their right mind would give but us. And there's nothing left to do but officially close the book on the 2019 Justin and Tyler Movie Awards. Thank you so much, as always, for watching, for commenting, for sharing your thoughts on the year that was in cinema. Thank you so much for taking the time to check us out and see what we had to say about 2019 in film. And hopefully, if whatever or whoever is willing, we'll see you again in 2020.